This here is what the sky looks like north of a warm front. A lot of stratus and stratocumulus overcast in this area. Things are kind of in a stagnant weather pattern. And let's take a look at the surface chart and see what we got going on. You can see in the southeast U.S. we've got very warm temperatures in that area. Dew points are up into the 60s, so we're definitely looking like spring in a lot of places. Let's draw the front. For the southern U.S., this is going to be the approximate placement. You can see how that divides the 70s and 80s from the cooler 40s and 50s up to the north. West Texas there, still cool. The cold air is lodged in the higher terrain, and that means a good pattern for overrunning type showers in West Texas. All we need to really get those going is a good southwesterly flow aloft and a few upper-level disturbances working across that boundary. For the western U.S., it looks something like this. In Washington, we've got some pretty good northerly flow coming through that area. It has warmed up quite a bit up to the 50s, but the winds are still out of the north. And in California, it looks like that Pacific front has made some headway. It looks like it's cleared most of the San Joaquin Valley and has moved through the Los Angeles area. You can see how the winds out ahead of it have a very slight easterly component. They're predominantly out of the south, and temperatures are in the 50s and 60s. To the west of there, kind of a rainy pattern with cooler temperatures and a more moist air mass. And in the northern plains, it looks like there's a new outbreak of cold air on its way southeastward, approaching Minneapolis and Duluth and coming up into the Omaha area. The radar loops are showing a very large mass of rain coming across the Santa Barbara area up into the Fresno-Bakersfield area. And since a lot of those fronts there are antifronts, that indicates that the cold front is going to be running something like that. And we did see on the surface map how it's probably already pushed up into the Los Angeles area. So that front is going to be out ahead of that. And back out to the west, we're going to find our upper level low, probably around the San Francisco area or maybe a little bit to the west of there. And there's the satellite loop showing that very rainy pattern there in Central California. And yeah, there's that upper level low right there. You can see that little spin in the upper levels. And that's going to be a barotropic cold core low there. The implied frontal locations are going to be looking something like this here. Warm front in far northern California, and there's that cold front probably around Ventura, Bakersfield, and northward. Yet another nice day in the Pacific Northwest. A few of those low clouds hanging on behind the cold front, and whatever remains there are of that cold front are probably going to be something like that, and it's probably starting to mix into the north side of that California system there. We're also seeing some clearing there off the Washington coast, and that's due to an offshore flow, bringing some drier air off the coast. And indeed, we can see that there. Look at those dew points. 30s all the way from Astoria down the coast, and 17 there at Quileute. Very dry air. So, yeah, no wonder we have an absence of clouds in that area. Continued cloudy there in the northern plains with that new cold front moving southward. And, of course, along the tail end of those fronts, you tend to get upslope, and that'll keep those clouds in place there over Nebraska and Wyoming. Likewise, an unsettled pattern there for Texas and Louisiana, Oklahoma. We know that that front is running something like that, and you can see that telltale upslope cloud pattern there, stratocumulus and stratus there in the Edwards Plateau of Texas, and almost baking up against the lee side right there. See that right there in the Fort Stockton area? Looks like we're starting to get a little bit of that convection going up along the boundary. Cold stationary front pattern, that tends to keep that front kind of locked up there in the I-10 area. It's a good time to be out at Bakersfield, Texas, Fort Stockton, Sterling City. And we can see that one cell just now starting to go up in that area. Looks a little bit like a turkey tower, but there's more congested cumulus going up, so we're probably going to see that start to come together. And it looks like the moisture field is in place, got transverse bands out ahead of it, so we could see a little bit of a modest chase day there in the I-10 corridor. SPC there going for a marginal risk for that area, so it looks like our thunderstorm chance is not that great, and we don't even have a mesoscale discussion in effect. But I'd imagine somebody's probably down there. Southeast U.S., mostly under the influence of return flow. The usual easterlies there across Florida looks a little bit more stormy there than in past days, and the rest of the Gulf Coast under this anticyclonic southerly flow. The main fronts are looking like that right there, so we're getting a little bit of isentropic lift anywhere from Atlanta up to the Huntsville area, Memphis, and Little Rock, helping to support that low cloud field in that area. And the northeast U.S. starting to see some deterioration of the weather. It's fair in New York and New England, but you can see the clouds are coming. Looks like a warm air advection pattern starting to get set up, and we know that that frontal system out in the Midwest is on its way in, so weather will be going downhill over the next day. So for tonight, the patterns are going to look like this. We've already kind of gone over that on the other charts. So it looks like this system there in California will be moving into Nevada, and Los Angeles probably getting some rain this evening. And you can see that front there in the Great Lakes moving rapidly to the southeast. For tomorrow, we've got the California system now crossing into Utah and Arizona. You can see the cold core low back out over the California coast there. In Texas, it looks like the front lifts up into the Dallas area up to Childress, so maybe a chance of chaseable storms. Got to consider this is about 7 p.m. Most chase activity is more like 3 or 4 p.m., so I'd be looking at maybe Lubbock to Childress to maybe Guthrie. Along the Caprock there, maybe a chance of chaseable activity. Haven't looked at instability, but we'll try to take a peek at that just after this. For Wednesday evening, looks like that front continues lifting northward, and it's now from Kansas to Illinois to Ohio. And you can see some evidence of maybe a mesolow, kind of a subscale low maybe right there over the Indianapolis area. And that could back the winds along the warm front and enhance any potential for severe weather. So we're going to keep an eye there on Indiana and Ohio. And back in Ohio, looking at the surface-based Cape, not much of anything. Even south of the warm front there in Kentucky, it's just wet adiabatic, so not a whole lot of moisture really. I think that's a consequence of being so far from the upper level troughing. Out in the Pacific, it's not really showing it, but there's a low there around the Albuquerque area. That's the Pacific system coming together there in New Mexico, interacting with moisture in Texas, and things are going downhill in that area. The upper level low, that's in Southern California still, but anywhere between that and the front, good chance for unstable weather. Even though back here they don't really have much surface moisture, there's a ton of upper level lift, and that'll get a lot of showers going in that area. For Thursday, it looks like the Pacific system starts to lose some definition. It gets kind of wrapped up into this big polar system and kind of becomes one big event there. So the 997 millbar low there, centered in Kansas, and anywhere downstream from that low, looks like things will be going downhill. And looks like a very fast-moving system. That 1042 millibar high from Canada just plows southeast through the U.S., and things rapidly start improving during the day on Friday. Some residual precip there around the Atlanta area, but you can see there's not much of a pressure gradient there, just kind of a light, maybe westerly gradient. So that's not going to help much with shear. I would expect those storms to be on the non-severe side. For Saturday, it looks like most of the southern U.S. returns to that cool Great Lakes pattern, northeasterly flow, keeping things kind of mild. Things are starting to destabilize there in the east and the western U.S. Another upper level low off the California coast. This looks like a cold core low, most of it aloft. There's the situation for Sunday. Things still kind of cool in Texas, but the front is starting to lift northward through Houston and San Antonio. And you can see there in California, it looks like a new system rapidly coming together. Most of it's going to be south of the border, but in the Los Angeles area, upper level low effect in that area, probably going to be very showery and kind of blustery there in Los Angeles. For Monday, the Pacific system has moved across the Rockies very rapidly, being mostly an upper-level system, and we get this Great Plains system coming together there in Kansas. Looks like a good chance of severe weather in eastern Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois. So that's something we're going to have to watch there. May even have a bit of a dry line in place, kind of in that area right there, maybe even further north. So yeah, this definitely spells enhanced potential for severe weather right there, especially northeast of that surface low in Kansas. So Kansas City, Columbia, that'll be something to watch there. So there's our Cape product there. It looks like very, very marginal instability, just 300 joules per kilogram. There is some good lapse rates from maybe 900 millibars up to 700, but above that, not all that cold in the upper levels. Another problem is the moisture. Looks like that tails off very quickly with height. So systems are moving so fast that we haven't had much of a chance to build up that low-level moisture. So that's probably one of the problems. However, yeah, look at that wind profile there. The soundings, that's some very good 0th or 1 kilometer helicity. Swept out a very large area, and that's going to give us a little bit of a boost there. So if we can get storms going, I think there is a potential for rotating storms. And that's probably about all we'll do as far as that goes. I really don't like going too much past 168 hours because the model accuracy does go down, and that's probably covering a bit too many charts. But, you know, that'll do it. That'll give us a good picture of what's happening over the next week. And for our viewer questions, I got another message from Michael Gonzalez asking about urban heat islands, whether they can help storms initiate. Can they help reignite dying thunderstorms? Well, to answer that, well, certainly. If you go down to if you look at your ingredients, all you need is moisture and instability. That's pretty much it. Your instability, you can get that from warmer temperatures, but you got to keep in mind the main contributor is actually moisture. It's about 4 times more efficient at producing convection than heat. And with urban heat islands, typically you're looking at maybe an additional 2 to 4 degrees when you're looking across an entire area. That may be enough to get storms going, but we're really dependent on that moisture. And that can be kind of hard to come by in an urban environment. Probably one of the most obvious examples of heat island convection would be pyrocumulus that you get over wildfires. So, you know, that goes to show, yeah, you can get some thunderstorms from a heat source. But whether a city is warm enough to contribute extra heat to get that thunderstorm going, I think that really depends, and personally I think the effect is very marginal, if anything. And as far as existing thunderstorms, probably not. By then, you're more dependent on boundaries. And if thunderstorms are dissipating, that means that there's something wrong with the environment to begin with. A little bit too much capping, or you're starting to lose the moisture, and the effect from an urban heat island is probably not going to help that out very much. If anything, you would probably just get higher-based thunderstorms going on. So that's about all I got for this evening. I appreciate you watching the Weathercast, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.